Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alright, I'm coming at you today to talk about oil. I've been doing some research, going over some stuff, and with all the crap that's been going on with Iran, talking about closing the Straits of Hormuz, figured to break down some info for y'all. Let's jump into it. The Persian Gulf, y'all might not know, it's basically just a big inlet coming off the Indian Ocean, and it's important because it's surrounded by all these countries that are like the most um, oil-rich countries in the world. And of course, they use the Gulf to export the oil, get their tankers going, travels through the Gulf, and then specifically it goes through the Strait of Hormuz and then out into the sea and gets to wherever it's going. The Gulf countries produce about 30% of the world's oil, and the Gulf countries hold about 60% of the world's reserve. So those numbers can put it into perspective for you. Iran itself holds about 11% of the world's reserve. Now, Iran's a big player in the Gulf because the shipping routes pass so close to Iranian land, uh, islands under Iranian control, and Iranian naval military bases. The Gulf's narrowest point, of course, is the Strait of Hormuz, which is only 34 miles wide. To the north is Iran, and at that point, to the north is Iran, and to the south is Oman. Basically, they break it down where there's a 2 mile wide corridor where the oil transport ships can go back and forth, and then there's a 2 mile buffer zone on the sides of that. So they really choke it down to have a lot of control over the ships as they go through there. What else we got? Roughly 40% of all the world's oil that's traded flows through the strait, so that's a pretty huge number. And any closure of the strait would force everybody to use other routes, which would take longer to transport stuff, and those other routes don't have the same amount of capacity as the Gulf does. So everything would get restricted, and supply would basically drop down. So Saudi Arabia actually has double the oil reserves and double the production capability as Iran. So Saudi Arabia basically owns Iran, and in fact, the Saudis stepped in and flooded the market and brought the price down on oil the last time that the strait was closed, which was in the Iran-Iraq war back in 1980. So, even though Iran's a player, as far as the actual oil production goes, there's other people out there that can pick up slack from the time if the strait is actually closed. Okay, in the 6 months of the Yom Kippur War, basically the Gulf oil nations put an oil embargo against the West. They basically got pissed that Israel, the West was supporting Israel, and they said, okay, that's it, we're cutting off the oil. And at that time, the 6 month period, oil jumped from $6 to $12. So oil basically doubled. Back in 1980, when the Iraq-Iran war took place, and that again was the last time the strait was closed, I calculate that the price of oil increased 30%. And again, that's before Saudi jumped in and flooded the market and brought the price down. I think it went up to like $38, and then when Saudis came in, they brought it down to 32. But that initial jump was about 30% increase. Now, it's always hard, if not impossible, to predict what's going on with this stuff because, we're not directly involved and there's just so many freaking factors. But here's a couple other points that I want to throw at you as far as trying to predict where things are going to go. Iran gets 80% of its foreign revenues from oil exports. So it's kind of crazy for them to totally shut down the strait. Basically, Iran would not cut off its nose to spite its face. But the caveat to that is these sanctions that the West has put on them. You think about it, Iran doesn't want to stop, their major export and major source of income. But if the West is not letting Iran tap into that 80% of foreign income, then they might not have a choice. Now, I don't know exactly how much of an effect the Western sanctions are having, I know that they're screwing with the Iranian central bank, and they're making it really hard to collect money and all this stuff. So it's just a matter of, if Iran gets 80% foreign revenues from oil exports, and the West sanctions knock that down to like 60%, then maybe Iran's like, okay, whatever, we'll just increase the price and we'll just live with it. But if that 80% gets knocked down to like 10%, then maybe they're going to flip out and, say, okay, screw it, we're just going to shut it down and let's go to war. So that's a major factor there. The other thing is Iran can't stand up to a full Western attack. Pretty much all the analysts and all the professional guys all agree on that. Everybody says that if it comes to an all-out, basically war, Iran can maybe at best keep the strait closed from anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, but they could not sustain it a long time. They just don't have the logistics and the resources for it. All right. As far as where the price is going, I think a spike in oil to the 130 range is likely if Iran is attacked in the near future. And I also don't think that's probably going to last long. It'll probably spike up to around 130 and then drop down maybe in the 120s or something like that. Some of the other articles kind of predict the price better, but I think that the 130 is a reasonable mark. But you got to remember two things in all this. This is all about making money and stealing Iran's oil. So that's where it's at. And these guys, these cats that are in charge of stuff, that's their goal. They want to manipulate stuff. They want to, cash out their stocks, make a crap load of money, and they're gonna go into Iran eventually, sooner or later. I don't know if it's gonna be in the next couple days or whatever, but because they want that infrastructure, just like what they did with Iraq. They want to go in there and they want to take control of everything. Put their little New World Order puppets in charge, and then they want to have all the Iranian oil and production in their pocket. I mean, that's just what it is. All right, like I said, all the links are in the description box. I hope that this video put some knowledge in your brain. Later, YouTube. I'm gonna ride on, standing on the edge of the road.